and that's affecting the other uh, the stable growth of the national economy. If the country that has If the country that has the economic crisis is a provider of the huge funds to the international market, its economic difficulties will cause the shortage of the fund in the international market and affect the stable growth of the world economy. This situation of the Japanese economy in 1998 to 1999 was basically the same. The withdrawal of the Japanese capital from the Southeast Asian capital countries caused the economic difficulties of many local countries. Although that's the, the, the Japan has to do that and they have no choice. Another way is through the interest rate difference and the changes in the different countries. The economic imbalance causes when the economy is imbalanced, either in the recession or the inflation, there is always a surplus or shortage of the domestic capital, and leading to a change in domestic interest rate. In an open country, if there is a big change in the interest rate, it will result in the flow of capital. That is, capital will flow from the market with a lower interest rate to the market with higher interest rate. When the flow reaches a certain scale, it will definitely affect the interest rate of the international market. That's affecting the economy of other countries. In the early 1980s, the US adapted the policies of high interest rates. The dollar strengthens, a large number of the foreign capital flows into the US, and other markets funds supply and demand chains. The real interest rate jumped sharply, and that caused the difficulties in other countries in use of the funds, especially the heavy debt burdens in the developing countries. They have the economic troubles. Generally speaking, after the change of the interest rates, the interest rate of other countries in the world is bound to change for their own interests. And domestic inflation rate will also fluctuate with the change of the world inflation and eventually form the synchronous or simultaneous change. That is why this inflation and contraction can be conducted. The next part is through the balance of payments, changes in the balance of payments. When the country's international balance of payments surplus or deficit, that means occurs of equilibrium or imbalance. It mostly happens in the current or capital accounts chains. In the balance of payment surplus, when, for example, the surplus The reason may be export more than the import, namely the current account surplus. The external funds inflows greater than the internal funds outflows. That is a capital account um, surplus. There's two types of surpluses. These two types of surpluses um, are likely to be the imbalance of the to conduction in the rest of the world of economy. It's also likely to put the economy imbalance conducted to the rest of the world. A large number of international payment surplus are stand down a large number of foreign exchange inflows. That increases a country's money supply, causes inflation, or avoid the inflation and currency appreciation, as to harm the country's exports. In fact, this conducts external inflation to the domestic. A lot of the deficit means the domestic capital outflow. In order to overcome this, a country will often want to tighten the policy, reduce the credit, raise the interest rate, which will influence on the foreign market, the supply of funds, and in the rest of the world, that's the impact negatively on the rest of the world. And the impact of this international balance of payment imbalance mainly focused on the transmission of inflation and the impact on the international market capital supply and demand. First is the inherent contradiction of the Bretton Woods system after the World War II illustrate the transmission mechanism well. The dollar as the center, the currencies are country's main reserve assets, and if the U.S. runs the target surplus, that just the repetition of the previous. That is the tariff's dilemma. We'll just have the recap here. If the U.S. runs the large deficit, the rest of the world pays the U.S. And it is impossible for dollar to flow to other countries become a reserve, which will lead to the dollar shortage and damage the economy. Damage the economy of the rest of the world. And the interests of the rest the world economy are out of balance. If the US runs a large deficit, the US will use the dollar to a large extent to pay the rest of the world. That will cause um, the dollar disaster, that is oversupply. So the position of the US dollar as the center of the currency will be shaken because the dollar weakness. And The U.S. transplant this crisis through the exporting inflation that hurts the rest of the world as well. And the world inequilibrium, the imbalance is in favor of the U.S. Exporting inflation to a crisis would also hurt other economies, and the world economy will still be out of balance. That is in favor of America. It's the inherent contradiction of the Bretton Woods system we mentioned before. So the next is through the exchange rate fluctuation. Most countries implement a floating rate under the government intervention, namely the managed floating exchange rate system. And the floating rate is praised for its flexibility, but it tends to transit the economic disequilibrium due to the flexibility. When the uh, when the foreign exchange rate of country falls, the people tend to expect the exchange rate will continue to fall, and the country holds the currencies will oversell the currencies, and that will cause the financial market troubles or the chaos. That and on the other hand, it is aggravate the market pressure, currency oversupply and the demand. That will cause the foreign exchange to continue to fall, then increase the market's pressure, even develop into the chaos, and even pass on the negative economic factors to the rest of the world. In addition, the decline of the exchange rate itself has the effect of expanding export and inhibiting the imports. The effect from the multiplier perspective is to pass on the unemployment in one country to another, and as other country follows the world economy would throw into the turmoil by the competitive devaluation of their currencies. For example, is before the World War One in 1913 to 14, that transmission, and in the Great Depression 29 to 33, and the collapse of the Bretton Woods system. This conduction mechanism shows up